So this is the first event of what will be leading to the IFAMA e Tipu International Conference in 2023, which is going to be held in New Zealand for the first time in its 33-year history. Though it's being held in Christchurch in New Zealand, we're also having a really close relationship with Australia. So this is a real opportunity for us to showcase Oceania. And today we're going to start building on that platform. So some of you will be very familiar with the organization IFAMA. Some of you will have never heard of it before. And I'm going to talk very briefly through an introduction of myself and the organization before we get into the real purpose of this session, which is hearing from our industry speakers today. So my name's Jack Keys. I'm the Oceania representative for the IFAMA International Young Board. And we have on the call with us today a series of other members who are on the IFAMA Oceania Young Board representing New Zealand and Australia. But IFAMA are an organization with the focus of bridging the gap between research and academia and business and industry. They're also a real intergenerational organization that have representation right from multiple students at university, or when I say multiple, in fact, hundreds, if not thousands, right through to many established leaders and executives across the world. And we have representation right across the world. There's hundreds of members across each continent, and every year the international conference goes to a different continent and a different country. But if you do want to know more about IFAMA, you can find that out on the website, because the purpose of this event is to give you all exposure to the most exciting activity that's going on in a series of industries here in Australia and New Zealand. It's going to be a rapid event where each sector leader has only got 7 minutes maximum to share a bit of a highlights of their industry and to give us a brief understanding of what's happening in their world. We had one question in Slido already, and we will take a break halfway through for some quick reflections after the fourth session. And if you want to interact with the speakers, there's 2 ways to do that. You'll be able to add your questions through the session, and we ask that if you do add any questions through the presentations, you also include which speaker you're addressing with those questions. At the very end of this event, we're going to have at least 10 minutes for our breakout rooms, where you'll be able to pick and choose which industry leader you might want to go in and have a conversation with or ask further questions. But for now, that's enough for me. Like I said, this is going to be a really quick run through, and we want to maximize the time for each of our presenters. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to our first presenter at Meat and Livestock Australia. You can share your screen, and I will start your timer. And when we hit the 7 minutes, I'll be given a clap and a thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And Jack, all showing well? It's all showing okay on the screen?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, great. Thank you. Everybody, I'm Sarah Strawn. I work for Meat and Livestock Australia, which is an organisation representing red meat, goat, sheep, cattle producers in Australia, in investing in research and in marketing to help our industry be as profitable and as productive as possible. I wanted to share with you 4 complex challenges and opportunities that we've set out, our industry has set as what we would like to be our focus and really guide how we invest our research and efforts. Now, these 4 focus areas, if you like, are to be the most trusted source of high quality protein in the world, double the value of the red meat being produced and sold out of Australia, achieve carbon neutrality for our red meat industry by 2030. And to do that, we're going to double the investment we're making in adoption. So how we're supporting producers in particular, but the whole supply chain and how they might adopt new research or research outcomes or best practice management and implement it into their business. I'm going to touch on those really briefly individually. So the first one, how are we going to become carbon neutral by 2030? It's a really ambitious goal, and others around the world are telling us that as well, but we're very committed to this and we feel like we're well on track. And this is to have a net zero position by 2030. The main way that we're looking to achieve that is in the middle of these, the 2 middle pictures on this slide is where our research investments are being focused at the moment. And that is looking for novel ways or new technologies or validating things that might already exist on how to reduce methane emissions out of our industry. The other one is how to improve carbon storage in industry to eventually get to a net zero position. The two pictures on either side of those is how do we upskill our producers, but also all the trusted advisors and consultants that support our producers to go on that journey, as well as having all the tools, data, platforms, but in a very consistent way where we can do that accounting, if you like, and show our credentials in this area. The next one about being the most trusted source of high quality protein. There's a couple of approaches to this. So on the left there is really highlighting the importance of our biosecurity, which has probably become more heightened or become more aware around that, if you like, in the last couple of months, specifically around foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease, which is become more prevalent in Indonesia and would have a significant impact on our red meat industry. So our approach here is not only just keeping our own country safe and our own industry safe, but we're also working with Indonesia as a really important partner for Australia to be able to manage the disease in that country too, and ensuring that animals from Australia going into Indonesia are well protected against this. So that's about being our integrity. From a quality perspective, we have a really well-established eating quality program in Australia for beef and sheep meat called Meat Standards Australia, and that keeps growing year on year, and is a way that we can guarantee that we're going to meet consumers' expectations of our product around the world, given we export over 70% of our product around the world. And then the bottom picture there, Red Meat Green Facts. This is our community-facing brand, if you like, and this is really about making community feel comfortable that when they're choosing red meat or making a decision about the protein they're going to choose for dinner or for a meal, that they feel really comfortable choosing red meat for its health attributes, but also knowing how well we produce that product and the care we're taking in doing that. Doubling the value of red meat sales. Again, you can we're approaching this in a few different ways and having, because about 20% of a carcass really represents about 80% of the value. So there's lots of opportunity to extract more value from the animals and the product that we're producing. So we're looking at this. I've got three sort of separate areas here. We're looking at how do we just improve our productivity to create more product, to create more animals. So NB2 is the name of a program that we're investing in our northern parts of Australia, where we're helping producers adopt research that's been done over many years on reducing calf mortality and lifting weaning rates of cattle in the north. The producers in those areas have told us that is the limiting challenge, that is the limiting factor for their businesses, and if we can overcome that, it'll make a huge difference. In the middle, you can see some technology which is really shifting gears for us in how to use objective carcass technologies, so cameras and X-raying and CT scanning, to give us some really objective measures around quality of meat and yield of meat and disease and defects of animals as well. Where this takes us is into creating the opportunity to generate really robust feedback for producers, but also allow us to identify the true value of an animal when it's being put forward into the food supply chain, and we can give really clear pricing signals back to producers, which will then influence on-farm practice change. And thirdly, it's quite novel and right up the other end of the supply chain is how do we potentially take products that might be of low value or even waste and capitalize and turn those into products that we could capitalize into new markets like pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals. And so the picture you're seeing there is a whole stockpile of hides, cattle hides. And we've actually been investing and have now shown that we can extract collagen out of these hides and turn them into things like drinks, health drinks, the pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals you can see down the bottom there, which is opening us up, the red meat, into a sector we've never been before, into sort of $1 billion health sector in doing that. Now, lastly, to support all of that is our doubling our investment in adoption. And so what MLA is doing is has a pathway, if you like, of activities or products or programs that producers in particular, but it relates to the rest of the supply chain too, can get involved. And so we go from awareness activities where things like this, webinars or large scale forums where people can hear about new research, step through to signing themselves up for short-term training programs to get focused on something in particular, right through to long-term practice change programs where we're seeing really making a difference, where producers get together with like-minded producers to test and validate things in on their own farms in a cluster of like-minded producers, and they share the learnings with each other. And this really helps to de-risk those decisions around implementing something new, because we help support that through funding with them, and we partner them up with a coach or facilitator so that you're getting the most out of that. And those types of programs have seen about 80% of people that participate in that change permanently and then have the confidence to scale that up across their whole business. So, Jack, that's a quick snapshot of the red meat industry and what we see as the big four things that we want to tackle over the next few years.
That's amazing, Sarah. Thank you very much for that. If you'd like to unshare your screen, and thank you for taking on us on that whirlwind version of the sector. We're going to keep on going through this so everyone gets enough time to speak. And next up we have Terry, the CEO of New Zealand Apples and Pears. So don't believe Terry has slides. So Terry, you'll be able to come off mute. We'll spotlight you and you can jump straight into it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jack, and thanks everyone. And I'm sorry I'm looking a wee bit informal. I've just come off the cricket field. I've just been coaching my 12-year-old son's cricket team, so I'm looking like I'm a bit of still on the sports field. But listen, I'm a former New Zealand diplomat. I'm now I've worked North America, Latin America, been in this role for 10 months. CEO of New Zealand Apples and Pears. New Zealand Apples and Pears is the industry good body. Now, to explain that very briefly, that's a levy in our system. That's a levy-funded organisation. So similar to Meat and Livestock Australia, much smaller budget. So we get 1.25 cents per kilogram of all apples sold forms our budget, and we represent to around about 250 apple growers and apple and pear growers across New Zealand, exporters and marketers. So the whole supply chain, the whole value chain. We grow on 10,500 hectares only in New Zealand. We're close to a $1 billion industry, just short of $1 billion in industry, but 10,500 hectares, to give you, those of you overseas, a bit of a sense. In our country, dairy makes up about 1.7 million hectares and sheep and beef about 2.8 million hectares. So we're a very, very small, basically one decent sized sheep station as our entire industry. So that's a really important starting point. We're also we're quite proud of being the world's most productive apple industry. Apples are grown all over the world, as you probably know, but New Zealand is the most productive in terms of yield per hectare of any apple industry in the world. But we also want to become and prove that we are the most ethical and the most sustainable. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of those areas where I'm hoping over the next year or two we'll start to delve more deeply. I'm still finding my feet in this industry. It's a lot of fun. It's a very interesting industry in terms of the makeup of the industry as well. Those 250 growers, exporters and marketers I mentioned, about 4 or 5 large companies make up quite a substantial holding of the land that I spoke about. And then we have a very, very long tail of small and medium-sized enterprises, small and medium-sized family orchards. So my job is representing all of those different players in different sizes. So it's quite a challenging role at times. So in an industry good body, we always have what I like to think of as the burning platform and the future vision. So what has to be done today, and what are we looking to hope to happen in the next 10 years? Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what happens today or what needs to happen today or tomorrow. I've got a great team of really talented people in my team of 15. 3/4 of them work on those burning platform issues. 3 or 4 of them work on the future vision. And that's where we're going to talk a little bit in the next, I've probably got 4 or 5 minutes left. And then those of you that choose me will dive a little deeper. One of the biggest areas for us of importance is our immigration settings. So I'm going to talk a little bit about government policy settings, because as Jack pointed out at the beginning, really important role that IFAMA plays, that connectivity between academia, government and the commercial sector. Because for us, policy settings are vital. And in Australia and New Zealand at the moment, we draw a lot of our labour off the Pacific and from the South Pacific. Very, very important source of labour for our industry in particular. Approximately 80% of our fruit gets picked from the South Pacific. As a former New Zealand diplomat, I've been privy over my career to see the value that can add to a developing country. And what we are doing for the Pacific and what the Pacific is doing for us is a really fabulous arrangement. However, it is very complex and it is very complicated, and it deserves deeper thinking and very careful thought going forward. So it's vital that we talk about these issues really, really openly. We often see negative press about this, and we don't hear the story about the development that this produces for the South Pacific. There are issues around drawing down too many people from the Pacific. At the moment in particular, Australia has changed its policy settings, and we're having a lot more drawdown from the Pacific. Some of the Pacific Islands are telling us, hey, hold on, you're taking some of our good people. So we have to be very, very good people in terms of higher skilled workers. These programs were always designed to help grow prosperity in the smaller villages and in the more impoverished regions. So there's a lot of work going on in that space. Oftentimes there's a lot of negative press that gets seen around the public on this, and it's a really important conversation that we have to make sure that we keep that balance in the conversation, that we make sure that we keep maintain our sight on the pros as well as the cons. Our government at the moment is using that lever, the immigration lever, to try and push us towards technology and innovation, which is the second thing I wanted to talk about probably in the last piece of time I have. I think it's really important that we obviously dive deeply into innovation with a really realistic mindset around how feasible these new ideas and new innovations are. And so we think about how we transition to them. In our pack houses and our facilities to pack our fruit, we are very, very automated already. We're at the cutting edge in New Zealand of some of the best technologies probably in the world. And so we're going well there. On the orchard outside, much more complex, and we need lots more people and brilliant minds thinking about these problems. We are looking in our organisation to team up, to partner internationally. Why? Because we obviously have a Southern Hemisphere season and a Northern Hemisphere season. We can get dual seasons and what's called mirroring by partnering with international partners, Southern Hemisphere and Northern Hemisphere. I've been in India, and I saw there was a couple of India participants, which I'm pleased to hear, and hopefully they'll join for a deeper dive, because we've had India and Japan on our radar. They're two really important countries for us. We think there's really good opportunity for us to think about how we partner with India and Japan to promote 12-month supply of our fruit and new varietals. So we have a pipeline of new varietal developments that's set within our industry, Good Body. It's a subsidiary organisation which is doing all the research and development, thinking about the future of new variety and new apple and pear varieties. I've just seen the 1 minute from Jack, so I'll start winding up. But that's a really interesting opportunity, not only for 12-month supply of new varietals, but also thinking about how we can connect into technology hubs and spokes within some of these key northern hemisphere countries. So look, I'll leave it there for now. I could have talked about the future orchard around community development and how we're integrating Māori and Pacifica into our thinking. I could have talked about a couple of other things we're doing, but hey, I'll leave that for the deep dive. For those of you who want to hear a bit more, I'm happy to stay on for that deep dive. Thanks very much, everyone.
What a way to sneak some teasers in there, Terry, and bring people along to your breakout room. Well done, and thank you for another excellent presentation. We next up have Margot from Australian Pork Limited. So you might have noticed our participants that we're hopping back and forth across the ditch for this session. So as Margot's setting up her slides, we can see your slides, Margot, so you're good to go. Over to you.
Beautiful. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for organising this. What a great initiative. Look, so I am from the Australian pork industry. We're about a $5.3 billion industry. We employ 36,000 people across the country. And in terms of our role, Australian Pork Limited is a levy-funded organisation as well, but we do marketing, policy and research. So we're actually one voice for the Australian pork industry. In terms of what I thought we might run over really quickly today, it's really about where we see the industry going. And it really is, everybody talks about social license and things like that, but we actually made the decision that we wanted to start a conversation around societal celebration of the Australian pork industry. We wanted to reframe how people saw us, and we wanted them to actually be proud of what we do. We've got a really long history of doing some fantastic things around environment and around animal care and around biosecurity, and really showing leaderships in that space. So we do call it that society celebration, being proud of us. And so we also know that from our consumer research that people actually don't know a lot about us. So this last year in June, we actually launched the first in Australia virtual tour. So from farm right through to the shelves, we opened our industry up because we wanted to tell people not only what we do, but why we do it. And then from there, we've actually launched it down to really help people understand what careers are available in our industry and what that looks like. But we're going down the pathway of, you know, actually showing people and getting them to celebrate. We launched our first sustainability framework. We didn't actually have one. So, and 4 key pillars: people, pigs, planet, and prosperity, because you can't have one without the other. So they really do connect good people, looking after our pigs, making sure we're leaving the planet better than we found it. And the industry really needs to prosper. We have a goal in our 2020 to 2025 strategic plan to add $1 billion to our industry, and we're already on track and actually in front 2 years in. We have an aim that's slightly, we talk a lot about carbon neutral, we talk a lot about what that looks like, but we actually do want to be the most emissions friendly animal protein industry here in Australia. So 60% of our pig production using waste recycling and renewable energy. We actually want to be part of the renewable energy industry. You know, pig poo power is what we're actually aiming for, but we also want to adopt a closed loop. So when we think about circular economy, the pork industry is actually really well placed to be part of that, and we're aiming for a zero waste to landfill approach. So great that we reduce our emissions, but we've got a big problem around waste landfill in globally, and we want to be part of actually solving that. So we have developed those roadmaps as part of our R&D. We're making sure that our industry understands all those options to be off the grid. We do have about 20 of our properties currently off the grid already and contributing power back into the grid. And so, but to do that, we are actually following a little bit like what Sarah said, or I'll say leading what Sarah says. I'll be a bit cheeky there. We've gone back to the old school way of producer engagement. We have an intimate relationship with our industry, on the ground people working hand in hand, focus farms demonstrating what you do. And we do have some new technology investments, Black Soldier Fly, which is about taking the pig waste and actually utilising it into a natural organic fertiliser. We've had some great success there. We've got a project which we call the Emma's project, but that's around actually measuring the waste out of the pigs to make sure that the feed that's going in is actually not just going straight through and out. So it's an efficiency in the animal feeding. And our soils project, which is really understanding what we know our fertiliser and our manure is great for soil, but we wanted to do quantitative work to really understand how good that is, because we do support a lot of the other industries around horticulture and helping them with those nutrients. In terms of where our industry is currently sitting, we did a survey and we had about 45% of our industry come back, but 49% of our respondents are actually already using solar, which is just fantastic. But what's even better is another 30% are looking at ways, and we're working with them to transition. 9% currently using the biogas system because it is an expensive system, but we've got 9% currently capturing their methane and using it for energy. But we've got another 41% who are actually interested in doing that. And then carbon sequestration, you can see we're growing there, and wind turbines as well. We're starting to use wind. So we're utilising every bit of technology around renewable energy. In terms of other areas, we're making sure that waste off farm is being reused. Reduce, reuse, recycle, but we're making sure that it is. So 78% of our industry is actually using the effluent and spreading it on the crops as that natural fertiliser. What I wanted to show too, though, is that you can't have a good industry without good people. And whilst we do probably have the same issue as a lot of industries around an ageing workforce, we actually have a very high response of females in our industry. And we are starting to see a trend of young people coming into the industry, but we're also seeing a trend of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people coming into our industry as well. So we are still reliant on a migrant workforce, like Terry said. And we're actually adjusting our leadership programs on how to work with our migrants and pathways to permanency, all of those sorts of things. But just wonderful to see that we do have that equity in gender but age is obviously something we're doing a lot to try and tackle. In terms of next step, we want to bring sustainable to the table. So we want people to have the tools to be able to have those conversations at the table around what does sustainability mean? What does it look like? We know the UN SDGs front of mind for people, but what does that actually look like? And so in the context of that global conversation around methane pledges, international policy changes, we're seeing what's happening in Europe, and what people actually believe sustainability is. We really want to have that conversation. So we want to continue to deliver our results. We want to engage with producers, governments and influencers. We want to be part of the conversations before decisions get made rather than having them imposed on us. And we really want to start to tell our story. So we're using our producers to actually start to tell that story. And really, our dream is to have these kind of headlines. We want really positive, good news stories that people actually really are proud of the Australian pork industry, as I said, you know, really celebrating us. So that's what the future hopefully looks like for us, and we're going to work really hard to get there. So hopefully that was 7 minutes, Jack, but if not...
7 minutes on the dot, Margot.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for another brilliant presentation. My favourite part by far has to be that pigs is one of the 4 Ps in your 4 pillars. We next up have Steph Hopkins from the aquaculture industry, or Aquaculture New Zealand. So Steph will get you to share your screen. If you're feeling like you need to catch your breath, you're almost there, because this is our last presentation before a short break. Steph, at the moment, we're just switching over to presenter mode.
Brilliant.
And you're good to go. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Steph Hopkins tōku ingoa. Kia ora everybody, my name is Steph Hopkins and I'm the Policy Manager at Aquaculture New Zealand. Similarly to the previous 2 speakers, Aquaculture New Zealand is a levy-funded organisation in New Zealand representing our aquaculture industry. So it's a pleasure to talk to you this evening, and I'm going to give you a very brief overview of aquaculture in New Zealand and a snapshot of some of the challenges and opportunities for our industry. So in summary, the New Zealand aquaculture industry has got 3 champions. So green shell mussels, which are native to New Zealand, and they are our 2nd highest value seafood export, worth over 300 million last year. We also farm Pacific oysters, and they were introduced to New Zealand from Japan in the 1960s. And king salmon, otherwise known as Chinook salmon, and it's considered the champagne of salmon by chefs around the world. So now we're a small sector compared to others that you're going to hear from today. So we're around a $650 million industry at present. However, we have some lofty goals, and these are shared by the New Zealand government, who released a strategy to support aquaculture in 2019. So the government's aquaculture strategy sets a goal of achieving 3 billion in annual sales for the New Zealand sector by 2035. And it focuses on increasing the value derived from existing farm space, as well as supporting the development of new industries, including open ocean finfish farming, land-based and seaweed aquaculture. So now, as the saying goes, a picture paints 1,000 words. So I'm going to actually cheat a little bit and play you a short video. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so I'm sure that many of the same challenges I'm going to talk about are also shared across food and fibre sectors. So it hasn't been an easy year for aquaculture, as COVID-19 has continued to impact supply chains and workforce. Uncertainty in our export markets continues with higher fuel prices, logistics constraints and higher costs of shipping. But there's also cause for optimism as the world increasingly looks to the ocean and to aquaculture as a means of sustainably producing food and resources. Aquaculture has a strong history in New Zealand of innovating and adapting. And also with food service reopening in our global markets, the demand for our seafood is rebounding. So I'm now just going to cover off 3 areas that represent both a challenge and, on the flip side, plenty of opportunity. So the future growth of the aquaculture industry in New Zealand is going to be driven by open ocean salmon farming. And that's where we can get real scale transformative growth towards the government's revenue target of 3 billion. So the government has estimated that salmon farming in the open ocean could generate 1.5 billion in revenue, almost all from exports, if production volume increases from the current level of approximately 15,000 tonne of fish to 70 to 80,000 tonnes per annum, and that's around a 5-fold increase. Now, there's no room to expand inshore, so that's why we're focusing on the open ocean, the offshore environment. Decisions on some resource consents for the first open ocean salmon farms are expected in the next few months, with each application representing potentially substantial lifts in production. Fortunately, we aren't alone in facing this challenge, and we're looking to learn from the experiences of our international counterparts who are also expanding into the open ocean space. The countries like Australia, Norway, Chile and Scotland are all going into the open ocean, and each are using different solutions to work in this environment. We'll also need land-based infrastructure to support the growth with necessary investment in things like hatcheries, nurseries and processing, and even possibly a domestic feed mill in New Zealand when we get to the right scale. Innovation and automation will be important in future designs to optimise our productivity. So second up, here's a universal challenge: how to adapt to climate change. So the future of aquaculture in New Zealand will be shaped by how we can respond to climate change. We're already being affected by marine heat waves, storms and flood events, and we need to be able to respond proactively. The future brings opportunities to do things differently and better. So amongst the opportunities is a prospect of diversifying to farm new species. Seaweeds are touted as one solution to help mitigate climate change through carbon capture, regenerative aquaculture, or as an agricultural supplement. Researchers have shown that methane emissions from terrestrial farming can be significantly reduced by feeding a seaweed that already grows on our farms, a red seaweed called Asparagopsis amata, which could reduce methane emissions from cattle by up to 30%. And we're also actively researching how to reduce our emissions. Farming seafood is one of the most environmentally efficient ways of producing animal protein. We recently undertook a life cycle assessment study that found that New Zealand farmed mussels and oysters have amongst the lowest carbon footprints of all animal proteins and are similar in impact to plant-based proteins like tofu. There are opportunities to further reduce the carbon footprint of New Zealand mussels and oysters. For example, using more efficient carbon renewable energy sources, improving our packaging and reducing waste. And this adds to what is already a great sustainability story. And finally, we've got workforce challenges that have been exacerbated during the COVID border closures, like most primary industries. We're currently experiencing a critical labour shortage of around 18%. That's more than 500 vacancies across our farming and processing, but particularly in those key pinch point areas like land-based processing. Over the last 12 months, Aquaculture New Zealand has developed an aquaculture workforce action plan. We've got a vision to build a skilled, qualified and diverse workforce. We need to attract people, train them up in the skills that we will need for our future and nurture them so that they stay. We need foodies, we need scientists, we need engineers, we need farmers, we need creative, clever people like a lot of you on this call. So to be part of our future workforce, we need you to help us overcome our challenges and make the most from our opportunities. And as I said before, the future brings opportunities to do things differently and better. Ngā mihi nui, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Steph. And that wraps up our fourth presenter for the first half of this session. That means we have gone from apples to aquaculture, pears to pork, and we've stopped in at red meat in Australia too. So if your head is whirling right now as a participant, jumping back and forth and round, that is completely understandable. But you've still got another 4 presentations to go, so hang in there and keep enjoying all this inspiration and insight that we're getting. Can we please get all of you to show some appreciation using the reactions on Zoom? I want to see some hearts and some claps coming through for our 4 presenters so far. They've all stayed on time. They've all given us such incredible insight in those 7 minutes, so thank you so much. We're taking a short break to give you the opportunity to share some reflections. What is something that you've particularly enjoyed or found interesting so far in the presentations today? Catch a breather, pop to the loo, get yourself a drink as we see what reflections we've had so far from our participants. We've had over 50 in the session, and probably more than that because we have a couple of viewing parties where we've got 6 or more people in rooms watching us. So great to have such good attendance from both New Zealand and Australia. We will be kicking back into it at about 13 minutes past. So we've got 2 minutes until we go to our next speaker. Great to see that people are enjoying the breadth of industries. We've got someone else who also enjoyed the 4 Ps, and we've got some buzzing minds out there. While we've got the reflections coming in, another reminder as well, as Jess has put in the chat, pop in any questions, particularly into Slido if you can. We can use Slido to ask questions for specific speakers, and if we have enough time at the end, we may ask some questions for the full group. Otherwise, also make sure you're storing up some of those questions for the breakout rooms. And you're welcome, if you're struggling with Slido, to put any questions in the chat too. There's another great reflection there that there's a lot of similarities between the New Zealand and the Australian industry strategies. Some common challenges, but different ways that some of the industries are addressing them. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing all of that. We're now going to be heading back over to Australia, where we have Juan, the Senior Manager in Genetic Technologies at Grains Research and Development Corporation. So Juan, over to you.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Jack. And it's wonderful to have the opportunity to speak to everyone this morning. As Jack indicated, I work with the Grains Research and Development Corporation, and as 3 previous speakers have indicated, we're also a statutory levy-funded organisation, and our purpose is to invest in RD&E to create enduring profitability for the Australian grains industry. For my presentation, I'd like to focus on 3 innovations that are beginning to seriously shape the Australian grains industry, and in actual fact, the global grains industry. Each one brings significant opportunity to improve the profitability of grain growers, but at the same time presents a range of challenges that need to be addressed. So the first of these is digital agronomy, and by that we mean developing and integrating data layers to assist growers to make decisions in real time. So most people would be aware that there's more and more data coming online, and it's from both the private and the public sector, and bringing these data layers together provides opportunities to improve things like yield forecasting. It also provides opportunities to improve agronomic decision making by growers pre-season, within crop management, and also at harvest time. Ultimately, investment in these areas is looking at producing farming systems with more optimised and automated routines for paddock planning and management. And as an example of the sort of activities that are being invested in within Australia and are GRDC supported, there's currently an investment we have, which is a co-investment with CSIRO and companies looking at spatial and temperature prediction, with a view to providing growers information about exactly what the temperature is of their crop at any particular point in time, and they can combine that information with information on the development stage of their crop and the potential sensitivity to make decisions about whether it's likely to have been damaged by frost and heat, and take appropriate decisions. Some of the implications of the sort of digital agronomy revolution that's occurring, and the considerations here is it's all well and good to bring these data layers together, but it's critical to have data layers and yield data that's high quality, and that's an area where investment bodies like ourselves, and I imagine many of the others you're hearing from today, are investing in and focusing on. There are implications in terms of considering how to best leverage those insights against the experience that the farmer has and their agronomists. An area that might not necessarily fall within R&D, but certainly a consideration for growers using this sort of information is the plan for how they would manage this this on-farm data and its integration with commercial products and their comfort or otherwise with sharing that with other participants in the value chain. The second example I'd like to go to is new breeding approaches. So in this particular example, it wouldn't be new to our colleagues or you've heard from working in the animal industries, but certainly within the grain sector, both in Australia and globally, there's a move towards more modern and innovative breeding approaches in crop improvement. And so in Australia, at least, breeding programs are moving to more to genomic-based breeding approaches. And this is influencing then the investments that the public sector and organisations like GRDC are making. And that's driven by a number of things. Increasingly, breeding programs are increasing in scale, the size of the program, but also their application of modelling and prediction methodologies, as the diagram below demonstrates. With that comes an increased emphasis on new analytical methods such as machine learning, simulation, high throughput phenotyping, and new approaches to develop sort of what we call genome to phenome networks. And in all of the areas, one of the biggest and the most emerging, or the most important emerging trends is the routine application of genome editing technologies. Again, with these changes and with these innovations come a whole range of considerations. One consideration, and if we look at, say, genome editing with the red arrows there, is market and stewardship considerations. While the regulatory arrangements for genome editing and different types of editing are well defined in Australia, of course, Australia's grain products go to all corners of the world, and the regulatory pathways and the regulatory frameworks for those edited technologies are not as well understood or not as well defined in other parts of the world. And then on the other side, there's increasing need for partnership with industry and breeding programs, because the application of some of these new technologies requires access to very large and complicated data sets, which breeding programs hold and pre-breeding organisations not necessarily. The last area I'd like to touch on is automation and robotics, and most people would be aware that fully automated systems, and particularly autonomous tractors, are a reality. They will be in Australia soon, and technology for even more complicated autonomous and robotic autonomous systems such as harvesting is in development. The role, and I'm conscious of running out of time, the role for GRDC and other industry bodies in this area is not so much in the technology development, but in assisting that technology to be deployed in Australia in a safe and a way that actually works with other data sets that growers may need. And so a focus on occupational health and safety protocols will be critical, but also a preparation of the workforce to new roles. As we move to autonomous systems, there'll be new technology and also new skill sets that will be required to support that technology. And also we need to consider how those things interact with other data layers, the digital agronomy area I was talking about before. So that's a very, very high level overview of three emerging and exciting areas in the grain industry and globally, and where we as GRDC, an investment body, would be looking to interact. And with that, I will stop sharing the slideshow.
That's brilliant, Juan. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Really exciting to see those different innovations coming through in the sector. Our next presenter is Michael. So for those red meat lovers, you're going to get a second crack at the red meat sector, but this time from New Zealand. So Michael, over to you. We can see your slides. Thank you.
All right, so I'm Michael. I work for Beefland New Zealand, and like many of the other speakers, we're a levy-funded organisation. We represent about 10,000 commercial sheep and beef farmers, and I'm all about marketing. So in particular marketing New Zealand's unique grass-fed beef and lamb story in our global offshore destinations that our product arrives at. So thanks for the opportunity to share with you today. I thought I'd just start by answering a couple of quick questions with you. So, what is origin branding all about and why is it important? Well, I'm sure many of you care about where your food comes from. I know I do. But if you don't have much of an understanding of that place and what makes it different, then you're more likely to look past its products and choose those from a place that you do know a little bit more about. So country of origin in terms of branding plays a really important role in our lives as consumers when we're making decisions about what products we're going to choose. So what it does do is provide a shortcut to understanding and trust and create some context for which brands from a country can be considered. Now, this may be a little bit more relevant for some wide markets that are further afield than what we have here in New Zealand and Australia, but I'm more likely to consider favourably products, say, produced from Australia than I perhaps might be from China. So that's what country of origin branding is all about. What Beef and Lamb's done is created a global brand platform called Taste Pure Nature, and we use it to enhance the positioning of New Zealand's unique grass-fed beef and lamb production systems and what makes it different. And we use that to differentiate what we do versus our competitors, MLA being one of those. So globally, we know that conscious foodie consumers are seeking grass-fed, pasture-raised beef and lamb versus alternatives like grain-fed or grain-finished product, and even alternative plant-based products, particularly for its natural flavour, its nutritional properties, and of course its higher environmental standards. So our goal with Taste Pure Nature is really to build New Zealand's offer of grass-fed beef and lamb as the preferred choice for our customers and consumers in our key target markets that are really important for our sector. And those at the moment are the US and China by far and a long way. So what we do is we invest in partnership with our exporters in a range of different retail marketing activities and activations, really to build awareness, get consumers interested in what we've got, educate them on what makes it different, and then, of course, drive commercial outcomes from that. So I'm going to highlight one of the key campaigns that we've got going at the moment. It happens to be in China. We target a particular consumer segment called the conscious foodie, and what we know is that they're seeking more westernized dishes or inspiration for westernized dishes, but they really lack the know-how to put them together at home. Eating well and staying healthy is definitely at the forefront of their minds. COVID has really intensified this focus for many consumers, but particularly the conscious foodie. We're also seeing strong growth in food delivery and what we call the 3 R's. So ready to eat, ready to cook, and ready to heat convenience style meals. So we took all that and thought, well, what would be an innovative, unique way of delivering a brand experience, with our partners and driving consumer trial and ultimately purchase? And we thought, well, vending machines, why not? It's probably fairly new to our sector, but we thought we'd give it a go. So what we've done is developed 3 fully branded Taste Pure Nature vending machines, and we've located these in some pretty high traffic areas within Shanghai, and they're also in close proximity to supermarket stores where consumers can actually find branded New Zealand grass-fed beef and lamb products. What these machines contain are some pretty amazing ready-to-eat, chilled, salad-orientated meals that contain grass-fed beef and grass-fed lamb supplied by our partners. So we work with an executive chef, Jamie P, in Shanghai to create these meals that people can buy out of these vending machines. Consumers are able to browse the meal options and learn about the hero ingredients. So not just about the benefits of grass-fed beef and lamb from New Zealand, but also the other premium ingredients that we've used in the creation of these meals. So instead of going for, perhaps traditionally the white rice and noodles and things like that, we've actually gone for more premium ingredients like fruits, different kinds of salad options, and grains like quinoa and things like that. So again, trying to premiumize it and make a point of difference. So they can also make payment using the digital screens. So we've got this activation going right now, and we've been using social media a lot, geo-targeted advertising. We're working with key opinion consumers, and we've invested in a range of different activation tactics to create some buzz and a bit of awareness and drive trial and purchase. We launched the Purebox vending machines at a pretty high-profile media event a few weeks ago in Shanghai, and just off the back of that media activity, we've reached about 35 million people. I'm just going to play a little video, hopefully this plays okay, just to give you a bit of a snippet around the context of that media event itself. That's all pretty cool stuff. I mentioned activations, right? Creating a buzz and getting some excitement going. We've actually got one of these vending machines parked outside a 24-hour gym franchise called Super Monkey, and the guys on the ground, or our team over in China, have been running a bunch of different activations through the gym mechanism in the community there. On screen's a bit of a picture of some of the team actually engaging with it. So all of this builds excitement, builds engagement. These guys at the gym get to experience it and then share their stories across their own social media handles. I'm going to play one other short video just which gives you an idea of some of the other activation in action.
拍完了吗？拍完了吗？这有薄荷吗？这不是有薄荷吗？对，这个是有薄荷的，有薄荷叶的。
You can see when we actually invest in the kinds of activities in and around the machines, it generates interest, gets people engaged. They go and buy it, and they tell these stories through social media. So the pilot's got around probably another couple of weeks to run. Sales to date have been pretty solid, on par with expectations, to be honest. But we're hopeful that at the end of this pilot, this actually turns into a commercial program that our export partners do want to continue running. So that's me.
Thanks, Michael. Brilliant. Not only have you reminded me that we're pretty much at dinner time in New Zealand, but I'm also hoping you'll let us know when there's a vending machine coming to the viaduct here in Auckland and elsewhere in New Zealand. That looks brilliant. And it leads us on to our penultimate presentation for this evening, which is Emily from Dairy Australia. So Emily, I'll pass the stage over to you.
Right, thank you. So thank you very much and for the invitation to present today. So my name's Emily Samu and I'm the Innovation Manager at Dairy Australia. I've only been with the organisation for 7 months. So what I'm presenting today is a very high level, broad coverage of some of the things that we're facing at the moment as an industry. So who is Dairy Australia? Essentially, we are, like many of the other organisations here today, we're a service body for the Australian dairy industry. We are also a levy-based service body, and generally our services include things like providing farmers with access to business planning and risk management tools, insights on farm support, decision-making and improvement for profitability. We create awareness around career opportunities for the dairy industry, as well as providing resources for farmers around hiring, managing staff, building skills for successful careers in the industry. We do a lot of research and development, much like a lot of the other organisations on today. And we do those research around genetic improvements of pasture and cattle, and we provide valuable data to inform businesses to be able to make decisions on farms. So we're doing a lot around marketing to promote dairy products in the industry. We're doing a lot in terms of international market growth and trade, and we contribute to policy outcomes. Sorry. Just to give you a bit of context around our industry, there's about 1.38 million cows, with the average herd size in Australia being around 300. We have 8 dairying regions, and there's approximately just over 4,500 dairy farm businesses in Australia. We have a net production value at farm gate of around 4.7 billion, 37,500 in the workforce. And an interesting fact in terms of, which I didn't know before I started, was around, on average per capita consumption per person is around 94.4 litres of milk per year and 13.4 kilograms of cheese a year. We also do around 32% of our milk is exported internationally. So some of the risks that we've been having, similar to MLA, have been around biosecurity. So there has been a heightened risk around both foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease entering Australia. And similarly to MLA, we're doing a lot with our partners in Indonesia and the like to be able to contain it so that there is no outbreak coming into Australia. For those that aren't familiar with what foot and mouth and lumpy skin disease are, foot and mouth is a highly contagious viral disease in animals, and it really affects, it's one of the most serious for livestock. So it affects cloven hooved animals, that being cattle and buffalo, camels and sheep, deer, pigs, animals like that. So typically it's transmitted via animal and in meat and dairy products, as well as in soil, bone and untreated hides, vehicle and equipment. So it can be passed on quite readily from farm to farm. So it's really important that in terms of management of the disease that there's containment and, you know, we try and minimise transmission between farms. At the moment, there's no cure for foot and mouth disease. So, and a lot of the animals that typically get it will recover. Vaccination is important to be able to do that, but you know, it does have implications in terms of trade implications. In terms of lumpy skin disease, that is a virus and it affects cattle and water buffalo generally and causes things like fever and depression and the lumpy characteristics that you can see from the photos that I've put up there. So we believe that, the experts believe that there's about a 28% chance that lumpy skin disease could arrive in Australia within the next 5 years. So we do a lot of work with our farmers in terms of education and providing resources to them to be able to mitigate and keep their farms safe. And we work very closely with government organisations as well. Another sort of challenge that we're currently facing at the moment, which you're probably all aware of on the news, is there's been a lot of flooding over the last year and particularly over the last few weeks across various regions of our country, Victoria, Tasmania, New South Wales and Queensland being the heaviest hit. At the moment, currently floods are moderate to severely impacting dairy businesses all across parts of Victoria and New South Wales. And, you know, we as an organisation help farmers to access resources again to prepare and for and recover from floods. So we're in the thick at the moment of working very closely hand in hand on the ground with our farmers to help them in any way, shape or form that we can to get their farms up and running as quickly as possible. So the biggest concerns at the moment in terms of the impacts from the floods have been around animal health and wellbeing, in that, you know, assessing sick and injured stock and the like, getting feed shortages, so access to silage, feed, whatever it may be. We've got infrastructure fences and pasture damage, again, from all the water, access to farms, to be able to collect the milk that you know, is produced on a daily basis. Farming doesn't stop and neither does milking in events like this. And then there are exacerbated workforce challenges, and it's around how do we enable information to get out for staffing, resourcing, government assistance, etc. So there's some of the higher level ones. One of the interesting
Last little bit.
Yep,
Thanks,
we're
Emily.
working on is around greenhouse gases emissions, similar to many of the others, around enteric methane. And, you know, the dairy industry accounts for about 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions, with nearly 60% of it coming from cows. So we're doing a lot of work in terms of looking at feed supplements and feed management, grazing and manure management, technology and animal health practices, and to try and combat these issues. So I'm happy to go a bit more into that in the other session. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. Plenty of challenges that perhaps some creative and talented young people on this call might be keen to come over and help out with. But that leads us into our final presentation, and last but certainly not least, we're going to another different and interesting sector with Apiculture New Zealand, and Karen, sorry. So Karen, I'll pass the mic and the screen over to you.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm the lucky last, and thank you very much for having me. And I'm going to be quite specific on something that is bugging our industry. But first of all, just a little bit about Apiculture New Zealand. We're an industry good body like the others, but unfortunately we don't have a levy. So we're a voluntary organisation, and out of about the 10,000 beekeepers that live and operate in New Zealand, we have about 2,500 of them. So that's a challenge in itself. It's a growing industry, but we do represent all parts of the sectors, whether it's beekeepers from hobbyists, commercials, right through to the packers and market people, exporters and affiliate members. So it's a wide-ranging industry good body, and we're relatively new. And I guess this is probably no surprise to most of you. We've had huge growth over the last few years. I've just put up a few stats here, and it's been led by the Manuka honey industry. So in 2006, we had 300,000 hives. 2022, we had 720,000. But in 2019, we had close to 1 million hives. Beekeepers, 2006, 2,000 beekeepers. Today, we've got 10,000, and they keep growing. We keep getting beekeepers joining all the time, and joining clubs particularly. Hobbyists are huge. And we've also become quite a significant exporter. So from 36 million in 2006 to 440 million in 222. And so that value, if you include the pollination and if you include the honey and bee products, is worth about 7.5 billion to New Zealand. But as you can appreciate, with rapid growth comes growing pains. And so this is the challenge that we have. We measure our bee health through our annual colony loss surveys, and I'll take you through those very briefly soon. But also the growing pains around beekeeper practice, competition for access to nectar sources, especially Manuka honey, but also so many new beekeepers coming on board, and just ensuring that they're educated, they're informed. And when you have a voluntary industry good body, that can be quite hard. Reaching them can be quite hard. So I did want to talk to you about our colony loss survey. So every year we join a global colony loss survey and basically look at colony loss over winter. And as you can see from this pretty simple graph, we started in 2015. Colony loss of 8.4, and I have to say these numbers are still very low on an international basis, but steadily we've seen an increase year on year to reach 13.6 in the last survey, and the 2022 survey comes out in March. So that's been a 64% increase in our colony loss rates since 2015. And look, again, you know, putting it into perspective, US has got 40% colony loss rates. Some of the EU countries are sort of in the 20s and 30s. So while it's not bad, the trend is not great. We're concerned about the trend. And what's interesting, if you look into that trend, probably the big thing that's come through has been the issue of Varroa. And I did want to touch on Varroa because it's obviously something that Australia is also facing at the moment. It's been really quite significant, and you can see the cause of colony loss. Close to 39% of the colonies were lost due to Varroa. And I think while Queens are at 24%, we've clearly seen a lot more concern in our industry around the effect and impact of Varroa mite on our colonies, on the health of our colonies. But what I wanted to do is just break it down a little bit, because I think it's quite interesting. While it accounts for most of the losses, if you include queen problems, the interesting detail is that if you look at the pie graph first, 23%, close to 24% of our beekeepers that did the survey did not actually monitor. So, you know, this is a concern to our industry. If we know we've got an issue, we really need to be monitoring and doing what beekeepers need to do, be doing a better job. If you look at some of the points on the left-hand side, you know, they're treating at the wrong time. There's reinvasion post-treatment, there's ineffective dosage, there's ineffective products, and only 2.4% didn't treat. But again, I think the issue for us is, frankly, the Varroa is a serious challenge. It's a serious pest for our industry, and it's hit Australia as well. And what we're seeing is actually it's about education, perhaps more than, you know, we know what we need to do. We do believe that while there's some concern, it's about ineffective treatments. The issue seems to be our beekeepers need to be more onto it and need to treat and take it seriously. So this is a challenge for a small industry, voluntary good organisation that doesn't have a levy. We've got to be really creative in how we get our beekeepers to pick up on best practice beekeeping. And look, we have introduced a code of bee welfare, and we were one of the, I think we're the only ones in the world that actually has a bee code. It is voluntary. We are looking at how we can, I guess, make that a little bit more consistent across all beekeepers. But, you know, at the end of the day, our industry rests on having fantastic, healthy bees, and our industry's reputation depends on our consumers having continued confidence. So mine is just a very small challenge, a way to end the presentations, but really just to start thinking about, you know, what creative solutions do we have to this issue around pest management, particularly for Varroa. So thank you. I think that was me.
Karen, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. You've also finished on time. And that means we're now brought to the end of our sector speed dating presentations. But don't leave, because the best part is yet to come. Now, firstly, a thank you to all of our speakers. You've been absolutely phenomenal. And I think if we were all in person, there'd be a standing ovation. But instead, I'm going to ask again to get those reactions happening on Zoom. Let's get some hearts and some claps coming through. Absolutely brilliant, and I can't believe the amount of insight and different interesting ideas, challenges, opportunities arising across all of those sectors. It's really exciting to see. And what's especially lucky for all of us here today and our participants is I don't think there's any time that you can get not only exposure to 8 sectors across 2 countries in 56 minutes, but now also to be able to get some one-on-one time with you all. And so we really appreciate the opportunity that we now have to go into some breakout rooms. Okay, we should now have everyone back together, and we have a final minute to go. Like I said, we'll make sure we get everyone away on time, but I just want to say thank you again for everyone who's been in attendance. I think what this event really highlights for me is what a great sector we're all part of. Those that have volunteered to present here, and we've been lucky to be presented to by executives from across 2 different countries in so many sectors. We've heard about some of the world's biggest challenges, but also some of the most exciting opportunities and innovations. I also think we might have made everyone a little bit too hungry. We did have a few drop off, or perhaps got a little shy for the breakout rooms towards the end. But I think we had at least 1 or 2 in every breakout room. So I'm sure there was plenty of great conversations extended in that session as well. as I mentioned at the very start, this event is a lead-up event to the IFAMA International Conference 2023, which will be held in Christchurch in June. And that's going to be a 6-day extravaganza of academic presentations, panels, exhibits, workshops, and field trips. So stay tuned for our upcoming events and more information about that conference. Details about the recording for this and a survey for how we can improve events like this in the future will follow. And without the final thing I'd like to say is a big thank you, not only to the amazing presenters, but to the IFAMA Oceania Young Board who have helped put this together, Michaela, Jessica, Ruben, Samantha. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you all here today. So across both sides of the ditch, and for those other internationals who have joined us, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.